If you lose the word woman, you lose any way of being able to talk about us. It's a little like blasphemy. And sunlight is the best disinfectant with this stuff. And they know it. They know that you should do no debate, because otherwise they'll lose. In the United States, which is so much worse, they hand out condoms in women's prisons. Women are being raped in women's prisons. You can't say violence against women is really, really important. We must create this space for women. Oh, by the way, why don't we let these men in also that call themselves women? I mean, it all goes back to, do you think women are human beings or not? And I can only come up with, no, they don't.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dives, the MCC Brussels podcast, where we take a more in-depth look and explore ideas shaping culture, politics and public debate. I'm John O'Brien, Head of Communications at MCC Brussels. Today, we're joined by one of the most outspoken women's rights campaigners of recent years. Kellie-Jay Keen, founder of a campaign called Let Women Speak. She's known for her bold defence of women's spaces and language, and for challenging gender ideology that undermines women's rights. In this conversation, we'll talk about what first motivated her to take a stand, and how she's dealt with the public backlash, and how she views the current political climate, including recent court decisions and political moves, taking back what it means to be a woman. Kellie-Jay Keen, welcome. Kellie-Jay, many people know you for your activism, but not everyone knows what started you on this path. What first compelled you to speak out on issues about sex and gender?
2015, the Conservative government were elected. I was on the left. I had no idea that was going to happen. I was in a very comfortable little privileged bubble. And I joined this group called Awesome Lefty Women, some sort of online group of women. It was just supposed to be women. And then it got invaded by loads of men in soft focus photo shoots that looked like they'd run into makeup and calling themselves women. And I just said to one of them one day, "Are you sure you identify as a woman?" Because he told like a sexist joke. And not only did he get very angry, but all of the women in that forum just turned on me in an instant. And I was like, oh, okay, we can't talk about this, so I want to talk about this.
Wow. Was there a particular moment or experience that made you realize this could cost me, but I'm still going to speak out in spite of the fact that it may?
I guess it was really early on that we all knew, like all the women that I knew that were talking about it, we knew that we couldn't talk about it openly. I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at not talking openly. So I continued. And then I was banned from social media. I was banned from Twitter. I think I'm banned from change.org, Mumsnet. I was banned from Facebook for quite some time. I'm banned from Patreon. There's people that won't make my merchandise, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess the most sinister thing that happened really early is I was the first person interviewed by the British police for tweets about saying that you shouldn't castrate a 16-year-old boy.
What is it about this particular issue that makes it one in which you cannot speak about it, you cannot talk about it? It's different than other issues, right? That there is something that they seem to enforce a forced silence around it. You cannot say those things. And if you do, we're going to punish you. What's driving that?
Well, it's not true. That's what's driving that. I think you can't have discussions, because if you have discussions and everyone just says, oh, it's not true. And so it's a little like blasphemy. You know, you whatever side of that particular debate you're on, but it's akin to blasphemy, I think. And sunlight is the best disinfectant with this stuff. And they know it. They know that you should do no debate, because otherwise they'll lose.
One of your most famous slogans, printed on T-shirts, billboards and signs, is woman, adult, human, female. What does that phrase mean to you, and why did you feel that it needed to be said?
So I thought, John, that I would do this billboard. So I was thinking, like, I want to do something, I need to do something, and a variety of reasons. I'd been cancelled by feminists at that point as well, who'd made all sorts of accusations. And I was like, well, I need to do something that people will see. It will be a conversation starter. And I thought, well, what is it? Well, the thing that we're really going to lose is the word woman. And if you lose the word woman, you lose any way of being able to talk about us. So I knew that woman was integral to all of this. And so I decided to put it up on a billboard, the dictionary definition. And then obviously what was going to happen is people were going to see it. They were going to say, well, of course, a woman is an adult human female. And then it was all going to be over. And we were going to say, well, that woman did a spectacularly wonderful thing. Now we can all go back to knowing what reality is. So I think that's why. And I think it's so, I mean, the opponent, my opponents call it a dog whistle, which in many ways, I guess it really is, because everybody knows that it's true. And you can't debate it. There's nothing you can say that makes that not true.
Can you try to explain to me what happened to the women's movement? What happened to many people within the feminist movement that they got so captured? They were the first to sign up for the lie that a woman, that a man can be a woman. What happened to them, and why did they cave so quickly?
I can only think they didn't mean it in the first place. And it was just a good way of signalling their virtue. So even the things that are true that needed defending, like violence against women, I can only imagine that the women that then allowed men into women's refuges didn't mean it and were just there for the wage and the credibility and the status and the power that it gave. And so, I mean, that's the only explanation, that you can't say violence against women is really, really important. We must create this space for women. Oh, by the way, why don't we let these men in also that call themselves women? As if you don't understand the way that predators might manipulate and try and coerce you into accepting them into a woman's space. It's bonkers.
I think there's some people out there who have this reductionist view that they push back against gender ideology they say is unnecessary. It's unkind. The areas through which, women's spaces are compromised don't have a big impact. And women's bathrooms and sports are up there in the public consciousness, but less so rape crisis centres and women's prisons. Mm. Can you tell us something about the real life consequences for women when they don't have their own spaces and when men can invade them?
Yeah. Women's prisons, I think, gets left aside because we've already decided those women are not worth considering. We've decided that they've done something against society, therefore they deserve a punishment. And what in the United Kingdom, the majority of women that are in prison are in for non-violent crimes, and then they might find themselves in a shower where there is a man who's very pleased to be there. And when they complain, they might get time in isolation or extra time on their sentence, which is insane. In the United States, which is so much worse, they hand out condoms in women's prisons. Women are being raped in women's prisons. I mean, you put a rapist in a cell, it's like a kid in a candy shop, right? He's just got access to victims.
Paddy, there's a journalist in Ireland who made a radio programme interviewing women who were on the same wing as biological men who identify as women in Irish prisons. And it was really I was shaken afterwards because those women, very vulnerable women, forgotten about women, were terrified of being in that space. And the men who were there were using it very much psychologically against them. I really think it's a shame when we see things like that going on, and especially women-centered organizations not standing up and saying there's something wrong there.
Yeah, but it all goes back to, do you think women are human beings or not? And I can only come up with, no, they don't. Because that woman's anguish and pain and suffering, how many stories would you need to hear before you made a real sort of ironclad ruling that those men can't be in those prisons? How many days later would those men still be there? Like for you and I, it's a simple that it would be immediate. You would not believe it. But to try and justify that as like it's his human rights to be in that space because he identifies as a woman, and sometimes women are bad people too, it's just insane. It's only a ideologically captured mind that can do that.
Mm. Now, critics say that defining womanhood in strictly biological terms can exclude some people. How do you respond to that? What do you say when someone says something like that?
Good, that's the point. Of course it's exclusive. In order to belong to the woman club, you actually need to be one. I mean, it's a low bar. You can be any sort of woman, but you just can't be a man.
Recently, we've seen renewed political debate around gender policy, from executive actions by the President of the United States, President Trump, to the Supreme Court ruling in the UK that proclaimed a woman is a biological human female. How do you interpret these developments? Are they the beginning of the end of the lunatic period?
They might be. I mean, I think in America they probably are, because I think Trump is a very determined man. And I think it was a long time coming, and they went so much further. You know, they mutilated so many children under this ideology. So it's brilliant. I was so delighted when he was elected. In the United Kingdom, the Supreme Court ruling, what's interesting about that is it hasn't changed anything. As in, the law was the law before, and it's the law after. Somebody just said, well, of course, it's an adult human female. Of course, we all know it is. So those institutions that were previously misinterpreting the law and pretending that men could be welcomed into women-only spaces, I don't think they're going to change anytime soon. I think it's going to take a lot of money and court cases, or maybe just a really big one where we totally cripple an organisation into kind of bankruptcy, which would be great, or a police force. You know, we do something so damning that others just follow suit.
There is something, though, that's happened in the last couple of years, that this way of thinking has been embedded in institutions, everything from the police force, the health service, the education service, and particularly the education service. I'm wondering what you think about, there's a whole generation of kids out there now who've been indoctrinated with this idea. And I wonder what you think our chances are of reversing that trend in which our children have been told something that's not true.
Yes. How it's going to happen, I think, is we have to trust that I don't think a lot of children do think it's true. I think they are still, like so many others, coerced into saying that they think it's true. But there are, you know, I meet young people all the time. I met a 15-year-old who said, we have a gender-neutral toilet at school, and I was desperate to go to the loo. So I went in, and when I came out, the teacher said, that's just for non-binary pupils. So he said, well, when I went in, I thought I was non-binary, and on my way out, I had a think, and I know I'm a boy. So I think that's been happening sort of for a long time, and I think it's quite obnoxious children that have gone along with it in the main, or sometimes very vulnerable kids. But I think we have to get it out of the universities, because they're training the teachers who are training the children, and they are training. It's not an education.
Now, what would you like lawmakers, whether it's in the United States, the UK, or the European Union, what would you like lawmakers to understand about the real threat to women's rights? Because aside from the women's movement who sold out on women, I think it's politicians who seem to have been captured by this ideology and went along with it to such an extraordinary degree. In my own country, the Republic of Ireland, it's absolutely ridiculous. What is it that you want policymakers to know about the threat to women's rights that would actually reverse this trend and this political trend of giving the trans lobby whatever they ask for?
Oh, goodness. I think they have to just go back to the truth. I mean, surely the truth is always the best way. For politicians that want to be elected, I suggest that you catch up, because I think it's an election winner. If you start speaking bravely on this, because the tide's sort of turning in the public consciousness. So we are all looking for honest politicians to vote for. But as far as policymakers go, I just think you have to go back, maybe 2008, look at some honest policies that existed back then. And I think maybe the 90s was the last time we were truly progressing. And I think then we just got to a point where we're like, oh, okay, where's the money? Mm-hmm. So the good will out. I think the truth will always rise to the top eventually. And I'd like to remind those policymakers that many of us women have very, very long memories, and you won't do well.
One of the things I admire women all over the world who have been part of standing up about biological sex and telling the truth about it and trying to get some sanity. But one of the groups of women very often say that it's important that you don't work with the right wing, or you don't work with this idea of right wing, left wing. What's your view about, from the point of view of the struggle that you're involved in pushing forward? Do you care whether someone's right, left, green, in between, or is it a matter of people just standing up for the right thing regardless of where they are politically?
Yeah, I think I focus on what people say, not the rest of their opinions. I mean, people say to me all the time, "Oh, I agree with some of what you say," and I'm like, "Well, I don't even agree with everything I say." You know, look back 6 months, I might have changed my mind, but to discount what I say to left-wing women is, you know, right-wing women are women. We need to protect their children. Even if I thought somebody was appalling on either side of the political spectrum, I still would want to talk to them to enable families and children and women that they're related to or speak to or can reach, that they can also hear the message that a woman is an adult human female, and it is absolutely fine to say so, and more, that you should say it as often as possible.
There is men, women listening to this program today. What is it that you would tell them to do? And how would you tell them to create the type of change that we're going to need in order to get women's rights and children's rights protected again?
Well, depending on where you work, I think if you're a teacher in a school, you need to find a way of talking about it in the staff room. You need to break the silence. I call it breaking the spell. And the spell is the silence. And what you'll find, you might be the first to speak, but you won't be the only. If you're a parent, if you're parents, the things that you can do, and I would say dads, which sounds very sexist, but I'll just say that certainly in the United Kingdom, if my husband complains in a school, and I'm a pretty forthright woman, but if my husband says something, for some reason, his voice gets translated in a reasonable and rational way, and I think often women get sort of just set aside as moaning. So I would say, men, advocate for your mothers, your aunties, your sisters, your wife, your children. Be in the school asking about the policy, look people in the eye and tell them what the consequence of those policies are. But it really is, be the first to create a conversation if nobody else is having one. Because it's only through just continually speaking about this that it becomes something that everyone can talk about, everyone has an opinion on, and then we will take it to the polls and we will elect politicians that want to actually deliver the sort of thing that we need to see.
As well as speaking at the European Parliament today, you're going to do an action outside the Parliament, Let Women Speak. Can you tell our viewers and listeners what that's about?
Well, this came about because I started speaking at Speaker's Corner in London, and then we decided to take it around the country, and then we got protested by trans activists, and they started shouting, and just organically the women that had come started saying, "Let women speak." So that's how it got its name, and it really is exactly what we say, which is we create an environment in an open outdoor, because we kept booking venues and we were cancelled from venues, so we had no choice but to go out into the public square. And so women come and they may prepare speeches, they may not. Anyone is allowed to speak. It's open mic. I'm sort of the invitation and the women are the party, and they come and say things that they feel that they've been desperate to say. Sometimes it's the first time they've spoken about it. And I've done it all over the world, and it's magic.
Kellie-Jay Keen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you. There is no doubt that the lobby pushing a trans agenda across Europe have a profound effect on the rights of women and the protection of our children. What do you think about what Kellie-Jay has said? Do you agree? And what are you going to do about it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you'd like to learn more about Kellie-Jay's work, you can find her campaign online, Let Women Speak. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. I'm John O'Brien. Thanks for listening to the MCC Brussels Deep Dive podcast. See you next time.